I'm Amber Hurdle with Amber Hurdle Consulting, and today I want to squash some of the ridiculousness that is out there around various generations. The very first thing that I do, or one of the first things that I do when I work with my clients, whether we're talking about personal branding or employer branding or business branding, is I get us all on the same page with my generation guide, because it's really important to understand who you're talking to, who are you trying to influence, who are you trying to buy in, and and to be able to understand where they're coming from. It has nothing to do with hashtag OK Boomer or all the ridiculous things that we put on millennials these days. And let me just tell you, the crazy people on the beach in the middle of COVID-19, those were not millennials. It just drove me nuts that people are like, oh, the millennials are on the beach. No, the millennials were at home singing Baby Shark to their kids as they were putting them down. So let's just get some things straight. I'm going to walk you through the different experiences that each generation's um, have gone through. And that experience of life is exactly what shaped them into the people that they are, and provided the values that they have, and created the characteristics of that particular generation. I personally have tons of friends in all different categories. I think as a Gen Xer, whoop, whoop, MTV generation, I think that I'm a little bit of that middle child that can be the boomer whisperer or the millennial whisperer when it comes time to make those connections. So listen up. I'm going to not deep dive. I'm going to skim the surface of each of these, but I want you to genuinely understand the why behind behavior and the why behind people see the world the way that they do. So let's start with boomers. Boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. And let me just throw a little flag on the play here real quick. Different people do this different ways. I chose mine based on the most valid um, sources, if you will, and I did this years ago. So boomers are currently between the age of 56 and 74. They went through in life their shared life experiences with their collective, with their generation, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the Cold War, Woodstock baby, the Vietnam War. This is what their paradigm has been shaped through those experiences. And because of that, they're all about relationships. They love teamwork. They're all about work ethic, and they're very independent. So when your boomer boss wants you like in your chair, like from the time that you're supposed to be at work to you're supposed to leave, it's because that shows team. That shows that you're in it for everything else and that you're willing to work hard because they can see it and they can measure it. Millennials, Gen Zs, I know that's not necessarily how you roll, but they're not trying to squash your independence. That's just what they know. So because of those experiences and the values that they created, they're known as workaholics. They know that quality reigns. They want you to work to prove your worth because that's what they had to do growing up. And they're very relationship focused at work, which is why if you want to influence a baby boomer, get face to face or pick up the phone at the very least. But if you can walk into an office or get on a Zoom call, which we're getting those boomers to do these days, that's probably your best bet. And their signature technology, just television. TV is what really changed through their life. So that's the boomers. Okay. So I want you to remember all those amazing qualities about boomers. Let's move to my generation, Generation X. Okay. So we were born between 1965 and 1979. That means that we're between the ages of 41 and 51 as of the year 2020. We were the first latchkey kids. We went home with no parents there and started our homework. We are the MTV generation. I want my MTV. We were all about primetime TV. AIDS exploded and confused everyone during our upbringing. Divorce became more of a significant thing. Not that it wasn't before, but it became more mainstream. Everyone knew people who were divorced. And so that brokenness again, the fall of the Berlin Wall, that's something that we watched. the Challenger explosion. Raise your hand if that broke your heart and you decided I did not want to be an astronaut anymore. And we're digital immigrants, so we started analog. I mean, I had the phone, the almond color phone that you had on the wall, and it had like the little dangly string thingy, and you had to like walk behind a wall or behind a door to have a private conversation and just hope that nobody picked it up, right? Well, that's how we started. And now we, obviously can do technology great, but we weren't born with it in our hands. So we're all about work-life balance. We saw our parents drive themselves into the ground. We all want individual freedom because nothing's promised to us based on what we saw. I mean, Enron screwed over our parents. As latchkey kids, we had to be fiercely independent. The MTV generation, we're kind of a little rebellious anyways. And then we also want stability because everything was so unstable. And if AIDS and HIV is such a thing now, but I just remember growing up and that being like such a harsh thing. Fortunately, I grew up in an area where it was not as crazy. But people thought if I touch somebody with AIDS, I will get AIDS, that kind of craziness. So we just don't trust a lot. So we're all about working smarter, not harder. We always emphasize efficiency, self-reliant, super skeptical. I mean, we just question everything, and we can easily move between jobs with transferable skills. We tend to be a little more entrepreneurial, even if we work within an organization, because we're all about like, nobody's going to take care of us. So we got to figure it out for ourselves. My whole generation, that's us. So we prefer like text or email simply for the efficiency of it. And then the personal computer, of course, rock on Steve Jobs, completely changed the way of the world. And that all happened and unfolded in front of us. So there's a little tidbit, a little insight into my generation, Gen X. Now, let's move on to those darn millennials. Oh my gosh, if I hear that one more time, I'm telling you, they are fantastic. They're currently, having been born between the years of 1980 and 1994, they're between the ages of 26 and 40. So what did they grow up with? Very young, Desert Storm, 9/11, Columbine. They are the age of like extraordinary video games. I'm like Super Mario Brothers, totally can handle that. But these kids is a whole different thing. Google became a thing. Social media has been a part of their life. Reality TV, and then they're digital natives. They were born with, not born with, maybe not born with, but there was definitely technology involved in their upbringing. So as they have seen so much horror and so much uncertainty as just always part of their life, Desert Storm, Columbine, war, 9/11, I mean, just school shootings, this is all very much a part of what they were raised with. They want to have a sense of purpose. They love collaboration. They're all about the collective. They need a lot of feedback and recognition. And I think, again, that's just part of that processing the uncertainty that has always been a part of their life. Like, is that what you wanted from me? And to give them that kind of feedback is critical. It really is. And they want to have a voice. I mean, they were raised by people who let them say, what do you want to watch on TV, or where do you want to go on vacation? That is how they were raised. And so we can't look at them and be like, oh, I can't believe you just started today and you want to become CEO. Maybe we reframe that, because clearly millennials, that ain't happening. So just a little side note there. I am your person. I do defend you all the time, but sometimes you do get a little crazy in that area. But what we can reframe them is to give them a voice and to celebrate that voice. And if you're going to give them a seat at the table, then to allow them to maybe fail sometimes as they're learning on the journey. I will say at this point that, and I know I've beat this into the ground in the past weeks, when you have so many boomers who are retiring every day and you don't have enough Gen X to backfill those, we're going to need those millennials to step into some positions that perhaps they just haven't even been on the planet long enough to understand the type of experience that they need to really thrive. And so I am definitely an advocate for professional development and coaching and programs, anything that you can throw at a high potential millennial, because they are going to knock it out of the park. They are going to have the greatest good in mind. They're go-to is like text messaging or online messaging, even if that's like Snapchat or something like that. They're all about that digital experience. So if you have your favorite millennial who never wants to call you and always wants to text, it's just that's how they were raised. Their big piece of technology, of course, is smartphones and handheld devices, iPads or whatever type of thing that they have their little hands on, because that is their reality. So Steve Jobs a long time ago said, 10,000 songs in my pocket, you want one? And we're like, heck yeah, we do. And we're still rocking that to today. Okay, so let's move on to Gen Z. This is where my kids are involved. So Gen Z, they were the ones on the beaches ignoring COVID-19. Do not blame the millennials. And I'm not picking on you either, Gen Z. Okay, so these are the ones who are out on spring break. They're still in school. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So they were born between the years 1995 and the year 2012, which makes them anywhere between 8 years old and 39 years old. Now, these folks, I've read and heard time and time again that they are going to be the closest generation to the greatest generation because of what they've experienced. Now, millennials did have some war and they had some terrorism, but Gen Z, they've never known anything but terrorism. That has always been a part of their fear factor growing up. Extremism is another piece that they have experienced together as a collective of Gen Z. Financial crisis, and here we are again. They've had quite the rodeo. They've experienced real beauty campaigns. So the different type, like Dove, lots of different beauty campaigns have been like Makeupless. I know Rodan and Fields does that kind of stuff. Really just stepping into like who you are authentically and letting all of like the fanciness kind of go. Whereas that was not necessarily something that was in vogue with previous generations. Gay rights definitely was a giant win in the season of this generation. And if you don't like that, I think that's a giant win. You can inbox me all you want, but whatever. Rights for everyone. Treating people like humans, that's a good thing. So they produce their own media. Like, who would have ever thought? Like, I'm loving their TikToks right now. They are just making my quarantine special. I love it. And then digital security breaches. That's something we didn't think about that growing up. We didn't think about, oh my gosh, my identity is going to be stolen online doing my everyday normal business, but they do. That's all they've ever known. So we need to remember this type of experience. This is the world that they've moved through. This is why they're showing up the way that they do. And so what does that look like in a work environment? That is some hard freaking work, y'all. Personalization, everything. I mean, we get irritated with our employees because they want a personalized experience, but then we sit down next to our own spouse and listen to a different playlist or watch something different on Netflix while they're watching something on Hulu. Their life is all about personalization. So if you don't think that you have to do that in their day-to-day work, we got some, you call me. I can coach you, I promise. Okay. Recognition is a very big thing for them. Being authentic. If there was a buzzword for this generation, it would be authenticity. They're very creative. They want to be able to share things. They want to be able to share their life. They want to be able to hit a button and share what they just read with somebody. And they're really looking for stability. These are the kids that go to school and have to learn how to hide from an active shooter. So when they show up in a way where they're constantly thinking of what ifs, honor that, because that's how they were raised and it's not their fault. So they're going to be more about traditional success measures. Again, that stability that they're looking for, career, money, promotions. They have very liberal social views. Again, they were kind of born into the shiz show. They have more of a global paradigm because they've always been connected, right? So like my generation was like, oh my gosh, look at this. We can get online and talk to somebody in another country. They've never known any different. So they're going to look at everything in a global perspective. And they're also going to be super entrepreneurial because, again, I think any of us who have kind of that distrust with life and the world around us, we tend to know that we have to look out for ourselves first. They're all about FaceTime and video calls, and they're zooming their little hearts away right now. Like nothing about that is changing for them in this current environment that we're in as we're dealing with the coronavirus. And then their big tech piece is wearable tech. Hi. They're all about that wearable tech, whether it is a Garmin or an Apple Watch. that is something that is just kind of integrated into how they do life every day. So, with all things, with any relationship that you have, it's imperative that you seek first to understand. It's very important when you're looking at things from a branding perspective to understand who is it that you're talking to. I'm going to put a link to this in the description so you have kind of a little cheat sheet. I encourage you to keep that handy. And especially now, as we're dealing with a lot of different change, we're having to make some decisions about our talent and our human capital. And also we're just doing business vastly different than we ever thought we would be doing, even just 45 days ago. It just was not even on the radar. So I think it's really important to understand the people that you're dealing with and show both respect for where they're coming from and honor their experiences. Man, there's so much that you can get from the boomer population. If you hit Gen X just right, we will work ourselves to death as long as we get to play equally as hard. Our millennials are certainly just catalysts for innovation and looking at how to do things different in light of what's best for everybody. And then those Gen Zs, they will help stabilize your organization. They will help bring stability to anything because they so crave that. So with those things in mind, I just encourage you to share this video with someone who needs to understand those generations a little bit. Again, I'll put my little cheat guide in the description. And I hope that you will like this video. I hope that you will subscribe so you always know when we put out a new video. And if you learn something from this, man, put something in the comments. It will certainly bubble it up in algorithms. Other people will find it who need it. And also I will know that I'm just not sitting here saying crazy things into a camera all by myself, because as a professional speaker, I would so much prefer to look in the faces of beautiful people and feel that energy coming back at me. But instead, I'm in my office looking at this camera. So leave me a comment. Hang in there. Yes, things are tough, but there's always beauty in pain. So I'm looking forward to being on the other side of this. And if you're watching this in the future, I just hope you think back to these days and know that we are going to come out on the other side abundantly blessed. So hang in there, and I will see you next week.